ค We good to go? Awesome. Thank y'all for coming out today about this important topic of redistricting. Our county commission has been gracious enough to give us this opportunity to hear our feedback. Thanks to Commissioner Highlander and Chairwoman Smedley in their commitment to doing this right. Going to be a pretty easy process. We'll just kind of go around the room, hear from our attorneys, and hear from the Election Commission on their process and kind of what they need for us as we decide if we're going to move from 9 to 11 on the commission and on the school board. So with that, I'll introduce Commissioner Highlander.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McClendon, I had no trouble finding this place. I spent 7.5 years. Miss Mosley Jones and I came in together as newbies, and I'm thankful for the service of everyone on the school board. Of course, neither of us has had the service that Ms. Thurman has had. We appreciate that. Thank you for coming. Thank you for thank you for Hamilton County for allowing us to come here and for live streaming. We appreciate Scott Allen from the Election Commission, the supervisors there coming, and also I believe Mr. Taylor said that he is on his way, Mr. Bennett, to back you up, and so he should be on his way. And Mr. Smith just came in, but we're very thankful. We want to hear what the school board has as input, and that's only proper and right that we do that. And you'll hear some about the legalities, who has to do what, and so forth. But before we do that, I would like to introduce you to our chairwoman, Sabrina Smedley, who charged me with getting this together, which I was very glad to do. But she said we need to let the school board members have an input, and that's what we are doing right here today. So, Ms. Smedley, would you come up and say hello to the group, please?
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner Highlander. It's a pleasure to be here with you all, and thank you, Commissioner Highlander, and also Chairman McClendon for putting this together. For me personally, I asked Commissioner Highlander to schedule this joint meeting so we could hear from you all. I want to be very considerate of what you all are going through right now in terms of the process of trying to search for our next superintendent. I would really like to hear how you think increasing districts may or may not impact that search, and then any other ways that you all think increasing may have an impact. We've reached out to our attorneys a number of times. Apparently there's some general law, there's some private acts, and like I told the newspaper, it's clear as mud. It seems that everything is pretty ambiguous at this time. So probably where I'm at, and I don't care to share you all just from all the conversations I've had with them, I think it would be very wise for us to let our state legislature reconvene and maybe clean up some of this law and see kind of where we go from there. But that's kind of where I'm at. I'm glad to be here. I will have to step out at 5:15. I've got to be at another meeting at 5:30. I seem to be getting double booked a lot lately. But thank you all, and thank you for being here to participate.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Allen, would you come, please? Mr. Scott Allen is our administrator at the Election Commission, and he has certain problems and difficulties, but he also has a lot of strengths, and he wants to make things a fair process for everyone. And I've asked him to address some issues here for us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you guys for having us here to give our input on the redistricting process. While the Election Commission is certainly not the authority on redistricting, we do appreciate the opportunity to come in and speak to you guys, because the final decision does ultimately affect our operation as well as voters in Hamilton County. One of the main concerns we have with splitting the school board and county commission, the 9 versus 11, is mainly confusion among voters. It's going to create splits among voting precincts that would not normally have a split. For example, you may have a precinct, say airport, where half the voters in airport come in, they're voting in school board 3. The other half the voters come in, they may have a ballot for school board 5. So these voters are going to be the same precinct going in this place, and they're going to have different people on their ballot. Voters are also accustomed to seeing the same county commissioner as school board rep on their ballot. So, while that may cause some confusion in the beginning, I'm sure voters would eventually get used to it, but it would cause a little confusion at the polls until voters did recognize that this was a little different. There are some legal issues. I'm sure the attorneys are both going to talk about those, but our timeline for this is honestly, like we've been telling the county commissioners, as soon as possible. It's going to require a lot of changes to our voter registration system, because right now our voter registration system has voters tied to the same county commission district and school board district. So we're probably going to need at least about 30 days to get that implemented, considering the pickup qualification paperwork for school board members is February the 7th. You take that back 30 days, that's January the 7th. And then with the holidays, the commission is really going to be on a tight timeline if they decide to have 11 versus 9 district, because ultimately the county commission will still have to draw these 9 districts, and they will still have to be of substantially equal population. So some of you may remember the map that Jason initially presented in the beginning with the 9 districts. You had community split, like by the river here, you had District 1 or 3 going over the river, so you would ultimately run into some of those same issues with the school board if you stayed at 9, to where you may have a school board district split by a river. That's some things that would just have to be worked through and figured out on through the commission as they went through this process. But the timeline is not very generous, just because we've gotten this so late and everything started really late on this whole process. If it's okay, I would like to introduce my assistant administrator, Nate Foster. He's our technical lead on this, and I'd like for him to go through some of the technical challenges that we face with getting our system prepared in a timely manner to accommodate these changes.
Thank you, Scott. Hi, everybody. My name is Nate Foster. I'm Assistant Administrator of Elections for Hamilton County. The piece of software that we use to maintain voter registrations, precinct information, in order to be able to ensure that we get the right ballot to the right voter, that's a proprietary piece of software, and that's not uncommon. Other large counties in Tennessee also have proprietary softwares. We're actually very fortunate that the Hamilton County IT department is responsible for updating and developing new features for that software. So we have a very good relationship with Hamilton County IT, and we've actually been in communication with the lead developer on that software, and she estimated it would take about 30 days to do, which that's not too bad, but we did have some other things that some new features we were planning on rolling out, and we'll work around all that. Honestly, whatever decision the legislative body and the school board ends up going to, we don't really have a dog in that hunt. We're willing to work with whatever path you guys want to take. We'll make sure that our portion of redistricting is done by the law. Basically, really all we're doing is we're drawing precincts to tell voters what polling places they're going to go to on election day when they go vote. So that's really the technical challenge that we're up against there, but we can work around that. That's not a big deal. Really, the main meat of the problem really comes down to legally what can be done, and I'm sure the lawyers are really going to go into detail on that. We've actually been in communication with the state comptroller's office just to try to assess the impact that this change may have to us. And like Madam Chairman said earlier, it would probably require some legislative action to either amend or repeal the current private act that was enacted in 1992. But that is all I have.
Thank you. If you don't mind, give them a hand for coming. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yeah. I know when you have three attorneys together, they'll always agree if two of them are deceased. But I think Mr. Bennett and Mr. Taylor have been working well together. They've been working. Would you like to come up as a tandem or individually, however you want to do it?
Clearly, we didn't rehearse this.
No, we didn't.
But you have talked.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. Ruben and I've had a great discussion about this, and I certainly am sympathetic to the practical concerns that the Election Commission has, but the big rock to work around, I believe, is the general law, which provides that the school board is limited to the number of seats that you had back January 1, 1993. And so while there is a private act that does on its face say that number can change with however many seats the commission has, I think the general law changed that back when we went from our old system of appointed school board members to our new system of elected school board members. And so the way the general law reads, as I understand it, for that number to change, the General Assembly is going to have to pass a new private act. And again, I'm sympathetic to the Election Commission that creates some timetable issues for you. Fully appreciate that. But I do think that's the way to fix it. There's an old AG opinion that dates back to the late 90s that addresses our old private act and calls it a transition plan, moving from the old system to the new system, which again is the reason that I think we've got to go back to the legislature. Now, one of the things that I think Mr. Taylor and I agree upon very strongly is that the principle of one man, one vote matters, meaning you've got to have districts of substantial equal representation, which may result in some oddly drawn districts, as I understand what the gentleman from the Election Commission said. So.
Good afternoon. Basically what Attorney Bennett has said is we're all in agreement of that. Certain things are certain. The county commission has the authority to draw the districts, both for the commission as well as for the school board. The county commission is only limited to the number of 25. So if the commission is considering right now going up to 11 or whatever, that's certainly within their parameters. And as Scott has mentioned, there are some laws, there is a law rather that seems to limit the school board at 9. But the thought is, if the commission acts and they decide to exceed their present 9 composition, hopefully as soon as the legislature convenes in January, they can address the size of the school board, and that would still give some time for the election commission to get notices out to the voters in those districts, because the commission's proposed resolution will be phrased in such a way that it's assumed that the school board would mirror the the county commission. So therefore, if the commission decides to go to 11, the resolution would provide that the school board would go to the 11th number also, subject to the legislature making a clarification in the law that would allow it. Otherwise, the school board may stay at 9. I think I'm saying that.
And I would clarify one thing, that the general law would allow us to go to 11 school board seats, but you're fixed at what you had back in January 1 of 93 until the General Assembly gives you the green light to go to 11. So we were saying the same thing. I just want to be sure we're clear. We're at 9 now until the General Assembly gives us the green light to expand.
Attorney Taylor, that would be the case unless we had a different resolution, right? So the way it's currently written, but you could write it differently.
Certainly, we can write it differently. Right now, the resolution that's before the county commission says 11 for the county commission and 11 for the school board, subject to legislative approval or clarification.
Okay.
Did I answer you?
I believe so.
Okay.
Ms. Jones had
I believe so.
Tiffany's hand was up first.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So I just want to clarify, so on the time restraint, it's really that we would not be able to get this in place by the General Assembly until their spring session. Is that what you mean? And I assume that's what Commissioner Smedley was referring to.
Right, and as I understood the gentleman from the Election Commission, they're looking at a December deadline. That's practical. It's a practical deadline. And while I'm sympathetic to that, I think that the big rock that has to get moved is the number that we have currently. I think the number we have currently is fixed until the General Assembly fixes it.
Okay, and so if the General Assembly changes the language in that, does it affect the whole state, or is it just Hamilton County?
It's just Hamilton County.
Okay.
So the state law says, and it's 49 to 201A1, I think. I should know that by now, as much as we've talked about it. 201A1. So it says that you can have any number between 3 and 11. The number you've got is what you had on January 1 of 93. And if you want to change it, then the General Assembly can do so by private act. So there are boards in this state that have 3. There are boards in this state that have 11. Most have some number in between.
Okay, so but thank you. But the election commission, where our election commission
There's that gentleman.
folks, thank you. Okay, but the issue that you're bringing up is that basically, if you're going to run for school board for these 2 new seats, you would need to pull your papers probably by April. Is that right? Are we running into a timeline of like even being on the ballot if we were able to get our state legislators to move forward with this legislation?
So, can you guys hear me? Okay. The good news is that the school board will not be on the May ballot.
Right,
So
but it's on the
can,
August ballot.
That's right. So we can have pending, whatever the legislature is going to do about, addressing the private act. We can operate the county primary in May without any issues.
Okay.
That the school board won't be a part of that whatsoever. Our hope is that we can get these, we can work with the legislature and work with the county commission to finalize what these new school board districts would look like before candidates who would run for school board would be eligible to pick up their nominating
I
petitions.
think you have to pick up your papers in April if you were going to run in August, but you would maybe leave seats 10 and 11 open to pick up their papers maybe after the legislation is passed, so possibly after April. Like everyone else would pick up their papers in April, but but those 2 seats would.
Our hope
Is that not right?
Our hope would be that, we would figure out whether we're going to have 9 or 11 by that point.
Okay, I gotcha.
So,
Okay.
so it may end up being a non-issue.
I gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Scott, did I hear them say that even if we stayed at 9, they were gonna have to redraw those 9 districts? So even if we
Almost
stay at 9,
certainly, because, and I would
You
have to
won't have to
defer
read it
to
if
them,
we
but
did that.
again, one man, one vote requires that your districts have substantially equal population.
Okay, so even at that, they're gonna have to redraw, so a lot of people won't know if they're still in the district until they decide. Some of us may be redistricted out.
This entire discussion's driven by population change, but both by growth and internal movement. So it's a simple reality that you're going to have to redraw districts, whether that number's 9 or 11.
So that's another whole process that the commission has to go through because we don't have a say yet. So that's something else y'all would have to do.
And this isn't so much a legal issue.
Wow.
Well, am I assuming that if the school board can go to 11, they'd mirror what we got it?
There's no reason it wouldn't.
Definitely.
There's no, it would, now, there are school systems that have a different number than the corresponding commissions. Like, for example, Bradley County's got 14 commissioners, 7 school board members. Washington County has 9 school board members and I think 18 commissioners, but I could be wrong about that.
Several, including Middle Tennessee, they have the same districts, but they have 2 commissioners and 1 school board member per district. I know of 4 that do that in Middle Tennessee.
Yeah, but, so yes, sir, if you're gonna have 11 on both boards, it makes sense that they overlap. There'd be no reason to do it differently. I know that Dr. Highlander wanted to talk about practicalities and things like that. I'll make one observation that I think the school board is very well aware of, but it may escape the commissioners. Your county mayor, of course, is elected by the people. The director of schools is hired by the school board, and I tell every superintendent, your one job is the care and feeding of your school board members. And if you have to care for 9 school board members and supervise the staff, that's a lot of work. If you give them 2 other people that they have to report to, that's some additional work. Now, you know what? The General Assembly says you can have up to 9 school board members, so that's a practical problem that we can work around. It is, however, something for y'all to think about in terms of reporting structure.
Scott,
Yes, sir.
if I may ask, am I on? I don't know if I'm
You
on.
are.
Okay. I'm always on. In a perfect world, we, the school board agrees with what our county commission maybe have tentatively agreed with. I'm not sure what that does in terms of the number of schools that some of you guys will get. I think I understand that maybe yours goes way up.
No, it actually, so I've got 13 or 14 schools, and mine gets cut in half, and it makes it a lot more equitable.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
But because I can't speak for any of my peers, I can't, but I know this. It doesn't change a whole lot, as I understand it, Commissioner Martin, in terms of what schools I'll have in District 3. Doesn't change much, if any. But I know that some of these guys, some of my peers will pick up additional schools, and some of my peers will have less schools. And I don't know what anybody else does, but I know what I do. And I spend a lot of time in those schools. So if some of my peers are picking up additional schools based on this plan, is that going to be possible? And I could, sit on the sidelines and just listen. It's not affecting me a whole lot, but it's affecting some of the guys I care about. Are they going to pick up additional schools?
Well, I was just going to suggest maybe someone from the commission or the election commission can walk us through what are the big highlights that are being impacted with this redistricting, because we are really just sitting on the sidelines at this moment. Like, I'm reading the paper, I'm trying to be as informed as I can, but I would really like to hear the highlights of, or the big shifts that would take place, because it's a great point and a great question, but I'd like to hear it myself.
I'm just really kind of having a hard time understanding how it affects everybody else. I know how it's going to affect me, but
It's all based on population. Correct me if I'm wrong, fellow commissioners. It's all based on population. And actually, whereas, and I've spent some time up here with these charts. This is not what we're going to get tomorrow. This is what we got last week. But it's similar. We're tweaking each week. We're trying to get a little bit closer. Now, some of the schools, some of the districts have fewer schools. Most of them, I looked at. There were 74 schools, and we cut down 2 schools. We lost Lakeside, and the adult high school is now a joint future ready school, as you all know. And we're also adding, Mr. Smith and I stood side by side at the groundbreaking for the new vocational school down in East Chattanooga, which is wonderful. But I'll tell you what it's based on. There may be, Joe, you talked about going into your schools. If you have a school that has 300 in it, or you have a school that has 2,000 in it, it's all based on population. It's based on not just student population, but general population. And I looked at the numbers, and there are differences. School District 11, the way I count it, if on the proposed district, it has 11 schools in it, but most of them are tiny. Most of them are tiny schools.
I don't know about that.
I'll step in. I did the math on this just because I wanted to see, and it leads right into Mr. Smith's question. So District 11 would have the highest population of students.
Okay.
With 5,600. Our lowest district would have 2,000. So
Okay.
you're talking
What district is that, curiously?
11 would have 5,600, and then District 10 would have just under 2,000.
Well, now, I will say this. I have made the request that District 10, that is a split from 9, it's a brand new district. I have made the request that 10 gain Ooltewah High School, which has almost 2,000 kids, about 1,800. So I said that's not fair, it's unbalanced, and I have requested that. I submitted that to Commissioner Smedley, and I don't know how that'll come, but I'm thinking it should be effective tomorrow, that Ooltewah, yes, sir.
So on my end, sorry, Mr. Walker, on my end, what I'm hearing from a lot of our constituents is the splitting of the feeder school into some of the schools. So I would lose Red Bank High School and Red Bank Middle. And I understand this has to happen. That would be incredibly sad for me because it's a really incredible school. But the feeder schools, Rivermont, Alpine Crest, Red Bank Elementary, are not a part of that circle. I went last Wednesday to hear you all, and Commissioner Fairbanks, I believe, was the one who explained that it'll take me an hour to drive across my district. And my concern with that, as you all look at this is in your hands, is how well I can serve a population that is that distant from me, especially since some of them don't feed into any of the schools that I serve. So, and you know, my job is to serve not the geography, but the people there. And so, I mean, those are just the practicalities when I look at that map that I'm losing.
I understand, and it's once again, it's based on population. And in a sparsely populated area like Birchwood, for instance, which is in my district, I mean, I'm driving 20-something miles to get to the northern end of it, and about 15 of the others. But it's a sparsely populated area, but I'll tell you, in the next 10 years, it won't be. It's going to be growing.
So I just point out that feeder schools to high schools being an important.
Okay, anything else I can,
I've got a question for
Yes, sir.
Mr. McClendon. When you say 2,000 and 5,000, what were those numbers again that you're coming up with? What was that again?
That was student population of what the schools that would be in these new 11 districts, that would be their student population.
That are in buildings.
In their buildings.
But that's not necessarily the number of students that are represented by representatives. In other words, like if you're in district whatever, just pick one, number 7.
Yeah.
You're not looking at, I mean, those people are still going to have a school board representative, even though they may not go to, the building may not be in their exact district.
Yeah,
But
this was just taking whatever, if like District 7, it was taking East Hamilton High, East Hamilton Middle, that. So it's not a full picture, but it is a good picture, a glimpse of how many students are in that county commission district. This was just kind of me looking at the numbers as
maybe what Dr. Martin may be saying, I'm thinking, I'm not trying to speak for you, sir, but I'm thinking part of what is the school board sets the school zones, and the county commission sets the school districts, and they're two different entities, totally different entities.
Yeah, I think what you're asking is kind of going back to a personal reference. I lived in Concord, but I went to high school in Ooltewah. Different school board members for that school versus where I actually lived, who I would vote for. So that would be, I think that's kind of what you're asking is.
Absolutely, and Dr. Highland, you're not wrong in articulating what I'm trying to communicate, because I think at the end of the day, that all of us represent citizens more than we do bricks and mortar.
Right.
And you know, I mean, I guess if you were really going to have every school have a school board representative, you'd probably have 42 school board members, because isn't that how many elementary schools we have? And some are a little bigger than others, and some are smaller. And so, you know, we change the lines of boundaries every 10 years. The school board can change the districts where kids go to school every year if they need to. I mean, that's not something that you have a timeline that you say every 10 years we're going to decide if you're going to Hickson or Red Bank or Saudi. But we have to do that on these political boundaries.
I do remember when East Hamilton, wonderful school, beautiful building, really nice school, came in, and a lady that I knew very well talked her husband into buying a home that was zoned at that time for East Hamilton. And then when they changed, because of the population shifts, some of that particular subdivision she bought in was rezoned for Ooltewah High School. And she was irate. She said, we bought a house to get in this district, to get in this school. And that is, a lot of people do buy houses for that. But the school board, the superintendent and his or her wisdom, and the school board and their wisdom, they have to do what's best for each community. And I remember Rick Smith's statement at the time. He said, ma'am, I am so sorry for you. I'm sorry you did that, but I'm in the business of educating children, not real estate. And so, and you guys, do a great job of meeting the needs of children. And what the commission is forced to do by federal law, state and local, is to balance the populations. Mr. Walker.
I think you started to talk to it as we looked at the maps, and if anybody's in the Boudoir area, we thought it'd be fair to have a high school in the new district because the way it was kind of drawn up. So hope that the
It's
county
been
commission,
moved. It's been moved.
because that was, that would come out of District 9 and I would lose that school. But I think that makes sense. There's some things that make sense to what y'all are trying to do, and I think we all can hopefully agree on some of those pieces.
Ms. Robinson.
Yeah, I think I want to better understand what do we want to gain from this meeting? Is it to better understand what school board members think of actually the lines that you've drawn so far? Okay.
Really, it's what you want to do with school districts.
That's what I want to hear.
Okay.
What you all
What-
think
what
about
you all-
going at 9
I gotcha.
versus going to
11, correct.
That's what I want.
Okay. I'm not territorial over schools at all. In fact, I have the most schools out of any board member, and it is a lot. I have the most students in my district than anybody else on the board, and it is a lot. It doesn't feel equitable to me. It feels like, I am one vote, but I'm making up a very large portion of our student population. Personally, I think that it would be more equitable to create another district out of my district, and I think it actually accomplishes a lot of things for the commission and for the board. And I'm not territorial over what schools stay in my area, whether District 4 gets split this way or that way. It doesn't matter to me personally, but the way that you guys are going right now with my district, I'm fine with it. And Warren and I talk a good bit about it. I think that he's in a lot of support of seeing the district divided in two because I think he feels the same way, that there can be a lot more accomplished with the district that we served now having an additional representative.
In
So that's
starting
right.
this process, we were tasked with protecting the two minority
Yes,
districts,
yes.
first and foremost. And we've moved those lines a little bit. I know that Commissioner Jeter had made a request a week or so ago, and I got received information that would have taken her below majority minority. So all that's been considered as well, because we're tasked with doing that first and foremost.
Sure.
I'd like to say that when I was on the school board, Ms. Jones and I had we had constituents whose children went to Brown, Central, and Harrison. And they were actually, at that time, they were in District 9. And I tried to make her feel, I said, you are more than welcome to come anytime. And when I couldn't give an address to the Beta Club, I asked her, and they were pleased to get her. Probably she's a lot younger and prettier than I am, so they're really glad.
No question.
They're really glad to see her there. No question about that.
So I do think that it's important that we're creating another majority minority district, but I am curious, is there any downside to what we're doing right now? Because that's the part of this conversation that I don't get to hear. And so I need to understand, not only as a board member, but as a constituent, what are the downfalls of what you guys have already drawn so far? Do you know what I'm asking?
No, because I
Okay.
don't know of any downfalls.
Okay.
Oh, I can name it down.
Oh, I would love to hear it. That's what I'm looking for here is
I can name
Now, but Ms. Jones is next, I believe.
for sure, but I'd love to
I
hear
mean,
it.
other than us giving up parts of our districts we don't want to, none of us want to give
No.
up parts. I'm giving up, they've heard me say this a few times from the dais. I've worked very intimately and closely with my district, especially the area that was devastated by tornadoes. I'm losing several of those subdivisions that I'm still working with, and it's because of the growth. I have no choice. I'm not happy about that. I represent Collegedale. I've been very, very involved. Now, all of Collegedale is moving out of District 7. I had representatives from Collegedale come meet with me early in the process. Please keep Collegedale together and keep it in District 7. And so that's impossible. I don't think any of us at the end of the day are getting what we want, but we're doing the best we can to deal with the growth. And it is because Hamilton County has grown so much. We have 366,000 folks living here now. If we go to this 11 district proposal, we're gonna each be representing roughly 33,000 people.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we're at a time when probably it is time to increase the districts, maybe by a couple, just because of all the growth. But I think, and I speak for myself, I don't think any of us are getting what we want. We're doing what we have to do based on growth.
Yeah, I just am looking for open dialogue and looking for everybody's opinions, which is the only reason why I asked that question. So I appreciate that. Appreciate you telling me.
And I lost we had 49,000. We had the largest district, Mr. Walker and I, 49,000 people. I mean, by far. And a third of our district is gone, and including my daughter's home and some of my best friends. And I didn't necessarily want to lose them. I know I didn't want to lose them at all. But it's, I think, Dr. Martin, how did you phrase it about a marriage?
Absolutely, yeah, they're like a marriage, you're not perfect, you just gotta go with what you got.
And work your way through it. Work your way
I
through
want
it.
to hear Ms. Jones, and then I want.
Ms. Jones.
Well, Greg, I always like to be heard. I think my daddy used to say that it's good to be heard and instead of, never mind, seen and not viewed, that kind of thing. But no, I would say that for my concern, which I expressed at the commission last week, is that we ensure that we're not disenfranchising anyone. And I will say, I know that we keep talking about what we want as school board members and or commissioners, but I will say that from what I've heard from the people that we keep talking about, we represent the constituents that we keep talking about, we represent. It seems like we are more concerned with what we are getting than what they want. And so I know that the minority districts had to be addressed first as part of the comptroller's rules. And I've been actually following this pretty closely, Tiffany. I've been listening to the commission meetings. I've went to a couple of them, and to some of the community meetings as well. And so I do know in certain areas, such as yours and Dr. Mackey's, that they are not pleased with the splitting of that district. Especially the lower end that would connect them to Lookout Valley, that Lee Avenue, Piney Woods area that would connect them to Lookout Valley and Lookout Mountain. Their major concern is that it dilutes the vote. And diluting a vote is a means of voter suppression, right? And so those are things to consider. Now, I don't live in that area. I just know that in every meeting that I have been in, I have heard that complaint from constituents and from elderly tax-paying constituents. And I'm not here, I'm just expressing what I've heard from the community meetings. And then from other organizational meetings that I'm in, sorority meetings, community organizations, this is what people that are taxpayers and homeowners in these areas are concerned about. They're not even necessarily concerned about schools. They just are concerned about their vote. They're very active in voting, and they're concerned about the precincts. I have a question directly that I was asked to ask today, where they wanted to know, based in the districts, how many voting precincts are being pulled out versus how many are coming in with the lining. What does that look like? And so there are concerns for that as well. I think the bigger issue is for some, although schools are issuing, that's another topic, but I will tell you, just hearing what I'm hearing, and of course I refer these things back to Commissioner Jeter, is that they want to know about the representation and being able to have elected officials that truly represent them and their needs, and not what people that are making decisions are having. And that's why there's a big call for the whole community input in the fair redistricting. Everybody has varying opinions on if it's fair, if it's not fair. No, of course, nobody gets the whole cookie, nobody gets the whole pie. We get that, right? But I think I can tell you that's what I've heard, and people when they've reached out to me, like, can you ask the commissioner to ask this, or, and so I just relay those back because I'm not the decision maker or on that body for that. But I would say that those, that voter suppression, diluting votes, and proper representation is a big concern. I know in the Black community that is a concern.
Well, and I'm just curious, like, are
Just
we?
a second. Dr. Martin had his hand up. We'll get you right after him.
Yeah,
Ms. Robinson.
and I have a community meeting that I have to go to at 6, so I'm gonna leave here. But
Me too.
Yeah, Joe's got to go with me. But just some numbers that I think are important. In 2010, District 4 and 5, the two majority, were 60.16 Black and 62.38. 10 years later, we only have one majority minority, and that's District 5, not 4. Because 4 fell down to 48.92.
So what was that number again? Say those numbers again.
Well, it was 60.17% was in 4, and 62.38 was in 5. Now, when you redo the statistics here that the census data gave us, 4 has 48.92 and 5 has 55.96.
What's the 4 one? Say that again.
48.92, percentage-wise.
And 55 what?
55.96. So here's the one thing about the proposal that we have, is it makes sure that we have 2 districts that are minority majority, because it brings up that number for District 4. And then what it does is in District 11, it brings it up to an African-American population of 28.48, which is more than the largest non-majority minority district we have now, which is around, well, it was 16.81 at the last census. So now it brings it up to 28.48. And I just think that's an important statistics to keep in mind, because we're not trying, we're not trying to disenfranchise anyone. We're trying to help.
Trying to make sure we don't do that.
Right. And I just think those numbers are important to keep in mind in this discussion, and I would, Commissioner Smedley or Steve, I look forward to one of y'all telling me what happens the rest of the way.
I have a question though. Can you repeat what the district that you said was the current smallest minority district? What district is that now?
That was District 8 in 2010.
It was how many people?
It was District 6 was 16.81. And now with this new plan, District 11 will be 28.48.
Just for clarity, are you talking about minority or
Yes,
just
I'm
black
talking about
voters?
Talking about blacks, according to the census.
Okay, so it just means it's 2 different things. That's all. I just wanted to clarify.
Right, the black population.
Okay, I got one more question since before you all leave. That information that you shared, like where can others like? So when people call me,
I'll get it to
where
you.
do I tell them to send?
I'll get it to Sherry, and Sherry will get it to you.
Okay, because I just want to be able to give it to the people.
Well, part of it's right there
Yeah.
on that right there.
It's up here.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, I got it all.
And the other stuff,
Okay.
Ms. Jones, the other stuff that, those other numbers that I was giving you on this right here, that I got this from you guys, which was the 2010 and what the 2020, so it's not gonna be hard. I'll get that to Sherry.
Okay.
And then she can decide how to disseminate that.
That's fine.
Joe?
Very helpful, Dr. Martin, thank you.
Thank you.
Joe?
I believe Ms. Robinson had her hand up,
Oh, okay.
and then we'll get you.
I don't remember what I was gonna ask, but it's no big
Okay.
deal. Go on.
Just maybe a question for just my peers on the school board. We've had some conversation about the day is coming when we're gonna have to rezone our schools.
Yeah. We've kind of already done that once over the
Yeah,
last 2
we
years.
have.
And then right
So-
before that.
Yeah, I've done
Yeah.
it twice since I've been on this board.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just wondering, how
Could I interrupt you for just one second? I'm gonna say, I have watched the redistricting process 10 years ago and 20 years ago. And I'm gonna say Chairwoman Smedley has made it much more open to the public than it's ever been before, and I very much appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all.
I'm sorry, Joe, go ahead.
So I just wondered how this is gonna affect, and then Randy's fixing to leave, and you were gonna make a comment a minute ago, and then maybe you didn't.
I've got a community meeting too.
Okay.
The only comment I was making toward Mr. Perez's thing, one problem I had in my district, I lost a part of my district that goes to a school in my district. You know, I lost Mowbray, but all those kids on Mowbray come down and go to Soddy Daisy. So now you're representing Mowbray, but they don't go to school in your district. So that's where and I don't know
Yeah,
if that happened
that's-
to any other schools, but I know in my school, I lost Flat Top.
Yeah,
I guess those
that's how
people
we
come
are.
down.
Well,
and go
it's
there.
already like that.
Yeah, that's how
in
we are. Like, my
general.
child would not be going to a school
Yeah.
that I represent at all. He would be going to
Yeah.
a school that James represents.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
In the change
Well, I don't
or
like to
already?
be that way from
Currently, and even in the change.
Yeah,
If they, even currently in the change, if Harrison Elementary stays where it's proposed, he would go to elementary, middle, and high school in District 9, and we live smack dab in the middle of District 5.
Yeah. The precinct issue that the election commission brought up earlier is actually already a pretty prevalent issue too. So for that to be a reason to not look at changes or not changes, I'm just saying, I just want to put it out there that that's already a real problem, a very real problem. I mean, I can tell you a story about whenever I was reelected last August, but I'm not gonna talk to you guys about it publicly, because I'd be saying some pretty poor things about the election commission. But there is already plenty of precincts where it is confusing on who in the world are you supposed to be voting on at those precincts, because it's multiple districts.
And I
voting
think
on the precinct.
Mr. Allen discussed some of that. He's trying to cut down from the election commission, cut down confusion as much as is possible. But,
Mr.
Mr. Walker?
Yeah.
Sorry, and then Ms. Jeter.
I just think that, what I was thinking the purpose was, I mean, overall, we got a lot of give and take back and forth. I think, we go to 11 in county commission. I think kind of what we were asking tonight was, do we want to go to 11 on the school board? My vote is it makes all the sense in the world because for election purposes and all of those things, again, we've all talked about a lot of different things, but I think that is the most important thing, for our people who are going to vote. So I think it makes sense. If that was a question to us tonight, should we keep 11 and 11? I think we should, pending whatever legislation has to come out from the state.
I believe Ms. Jeter, you had your, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, to piggyback off of what your question was in terms of kind of other concerns that we may have as commissioners, I'll start with kind of what we just talked about in terms of in your district with Commissioner Mackey. Although I don't represent that district, considering that Commissioner Mackey and I both have the two minority districts or the two black districts here in Hamilton County, I have been getting a lot of phone calls from constituents in District 4 who are very much concerned about the removal of their communities out of District 4. Now, although I appreciate the statistics and the data that Commissioner Martin gave, I think not only do you have to look at those numbers, but you also have to take in context those individuals that reside in those communities. I've heard a lot about the word swing district being thrown out there. Quite frankly, I don't see if that's a swing district or how that's a swing district, considering when you look at Alton Park and East Lake historically in terms of voting. And that goes back to what Caritza stated as far as diluting voting power. That may not mean something to people in Hamilton County, but in our communities, it means a lot. So if we're really going to take this seriously, we have to consider all of that, not just looking at numbers on a sheet of paper, but really looking at that, because that does disenfranchises us, and that is voter suppression. Speaking specifically to District 5, there's a lot of concerns there. I have been very vigilant in talking about the Tyner community. We've discussed that a lot in our meetings. But then also last week, the map was presented where it removes two of our largest precincts, and that's Glenwood and Eastdale. And those are community of interest. And so again, if this is really going to be done fair, how do you remove, and that was not given any input, I was not asked, I was not given any consideration, any input to that change. So I want to know who did it and why was it changed and removed out of District 5.
Can I ask you a question? Whenever you say neighborhoods of interest, what does that mean?
Community of interest. So, you know, looking at what a community intact is and what to that community is important to them, where they go to school, whether they work, where businesses in that community. In our communities, 9 times out of 10, it's their church, it's their schools that really are those community of interest. So maintaining that is of utmost importance for a district like 5.
Glenwood, what was the other than Glenwood?
Glenwood and Eastdale.
Glenwood and Eastdale.
Eastdale, okay, thank you.
And part of Silverdale 1, I believe, because the new line will cut out like the old Lee Highway, Stillwater area, that curves over to Volkswagen Drive, that would encompass Harrison Elementary, but it cuts the vote out there as well. And in District 5, there's several voting precincts, but there are 3 large precincts: Washington Hills, Eastdale, and Glenwood. If you remove Eastdale and Glenwood, then your voting participation really decreases.
Okay.
And that is a concern that both Kathleen and I have heard at the meetings. And I heard it most recently at the hair salon Saturday, but that is a concern.
Thank you. Mr. McClendon?
I think to Ms. Robinson's point about what we're trying to get out of this, I've went back and forth on the 11 to 9, and I've kind of settled on the 9. I could be swayed to the 11. But we're in the middle of a superintendent search, and we're just now looking at candidates. And these candidates are coming in thinking they're going to work for 9. I'm sure they're probably not in tune with us enough yet to know we're looking at changing to 11. And I'm a little worried what that's going to do to our candidate pool, as to Mr. Bennett said, and several former school board members, Mr. Baker, Mr. Martin, know how much school board members rely on their superintendent and how much pressure they put on them. So 2 more people, that a little bit of a concern on what that's going to do to our candidate pool. As for my district, I'm kind of all over the map. I'm glad we kept East Ridge all together. That's important. I represent Spring Creek, which is out of my district now. And then I go all the way up into East Brainerd in Hickory Valley, and I don't have any of those schools in my district. So I'm representing people that it's kind of talking about confusion for voters. It's also when the parent has a problem at East Brainerd, who do they call? We already have that problem now with East Brainerd Elementary because it's right on the line. It's my school right now, but most of the people live in Mr. Wingate's district. So I get the concern of the voters, and that's critically important. But the day-to-day operations of the school system, when we have something that happens, our parents have to know who to contact. And if they live in North Concord or past near Silverdale, and they go to Tyner, they go to Ooltewah, they go to East Hamilton, because it kind of all wraps in right there. I represent those, and I don't have the institutional knowledge of knowing those administrations and that stuff just because I don't represent them. And so I think that's something that we probably can elevate a little more. And I don't know, one thing I kind of wrote down is if we go to 11, and while we might not mirror, using census blocks and school zones, can we make districts? And that would help if it allowed. I don't know if it would allow, if it was something.
I'm not sure. We could look at that. I would talk to the attorneys about that. I will say, one thing I would be concerned about mirroring the school zoning is they're fluid.
Yeah.
Because, as Rick Smith said years ago, that, he has to rezone where they do. So if we do that and we leave it for 10 years, then those zones could be, and Dr. Martin had a pretty good point. He said, we deal with people rather than brick and mortar buildings.
Clearly, I'm just thinking as
I see your point.
A better way for representation.
I see your point, but if we look at school zones, those school zones are going to be fluid and changing as a population shift.
Yeah.
I'm looking like in 7 and 9 have had such phenomenal growth, as you know, and that's why I've lost a third of my constituents. Yeah. And I mean, including my daughter.
And my last comment will be all the concerns about mirroring and stuff. If we go to 11, we will be the only large district, and you're familiar with this, in class out of the 4 large districts, and actually in this case you can include Rutherford County, that would have more than 9 school board members. Knox County has 11 commissioners and 9 school board members. Metro Nashville has 41, 42 city council members and 9 school board members. Shelby County has 13 county commissioners and 9 school board members. And then Rutherford County, they're either at 14 or 24, I can't remember, but they have 7 school board members.
So Knox has 11, correct?
11 county commissioners, 9 school board members. So it is something that can be done across the state.
Can be.
And I think it's rare to get a school board larger than 9. There's a couple out there, and smaller.
One has 20s.
Yeah, there's a couple smaller ones that have broken up into it. But that's kind of my concern. I think the most pressing out of all those is the superintendent search. And while that's kind of a short-term issue, it's going to have long-term impact on this district.
Having gone through this, when we got Dr. Johnson, as most of you here were here, I certainly hope that you have the superintendent in place before the election for the new school board members.
January 1st.
I certainly hope and pray. I'm sure you will.
Then they gonna leave.
Hopefully not. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have a problem with the fact that the same thing that Marco did, that you were gonna be representing people who go all the way to the Ray County line from where you live. And then too, on the mountain, you can't drive from one mountain to the other. On the map, it looks like you can just drive right straight, but you can't. You have to go off the mountain and up the mountain. And off the mountain and up a mountain. So it's completely, it looks good on a map, but it's not really, that's not the way it is. I have a problem with that. And I like Tucker, I like to stand with 9 districts, but yet I'm sympathetic with you because you have so many schools in your district, and I understand that's a big problem. But we're gonna have to redo the 9 districts anyway for school board. So that could be fixed in that process. That might be something that we might look at. I just don't like us as a school board having all of these people from all these different schools. Like Marco, you're gonna be, having to go to a lot of things for those schools that you really, or it's gonna take you an hour to get there
No,
sometimes.
I know. We're gonna drive it. I
And
told
so,
them, you're gonna get in the car with me.
that's why I would kind of like to, and the county commission's a little bit different. The county commission, people come to the commissioners, or you have a community meeting. It's not like you have to actually visit the schools and go to things. So I kind of like doing the 9, and then they're gonna redistrict them anyway. Maybe take care of some of your concerns, and maybe some of the other concerns that feel like they have too many schools or not enough schools or whatever. Maybe that can kind of be worked in, dividing us back up into 9, and without wholesale moving the lines completely and totally away from anything that's familiar with anyone.
I will say, and it might be too big of an ask, but if the school board could see what 9 districts looks like with regards to where schools kind of fall into what a new 9 districts would look like, I think from our standpoint, it would probably help us make a better choice. And we don't know what it looks like, because
We already have that map.
the 9 one, yeah, we can pull that up. But I think to Tiffany's point, like, she has 16 schools. I have 7 right now. I'm going to lose CSLA because they're getting a new school, but 16 schools.
And I just want to be really clear, it's not about like, oh my God, I have 16 schools. It's not that. It is that there are 7,000 students
Exactly.
behind one vote. Those 7,000 students deserve to, like, in my opinion, have, like, either be a part of a second vote that then, like, represents them, or, think about it, when I'm voting on the budget, like, I mean, my one vote and what I'm hoping for in the budget, like, impacts a really big percentage of the entire.
I think Ms. Ross made a very good point. It's numbers of students that you represent, not numbers of schools. And she did on this, if hypothetically we went to 11, she would go from 14 schools to 7, I believe.
Yeah.
Or did you, so.
But then if you think about that hypothetically, like sharing like Brown and Central with Mr. Walker, technically they get 2 votes because he represents them in a building wise and I represent them as neighbors, literally. Or vice versa, like I represent kids that I represent kids that you're their board member, but they attend schools in my district. So you think about it that way, you're not just one vote per se.
There's just not that many currently in my district. So like Harrison, like because me, you, and James, like I have kids in my neighborhood that go to Harrison.
And I share kids with Joe.
And then like Orchard Knob, I believe, Hardy, I
Mhm.
think.
Yeah,
And then
so.
probably the 2 Orchard Knobs and Hardy are probably, so it's only like 4 out of the large number. So
Yeah,
I hear
it's,
you.
there are some
And
problems.
you have a lot of magnet schools too, so
Right.
So
you think about that too.
4 that are well
Yeah.
chartered.
A lot of levers, magnet schools and charter schools. Listen,
I apologize, depending on
Go
the
ahead.
results of this, open enrollment that we're going to have.
Open enrollment's gonna change things a whole lot. Folks, I'm gonna tell you, our time is up, but if there's anyone that needs to make a final statement before we go.
I got a final question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Perez.
Because you made the statement, maybe before something we can decide. Procedurally, what do we as a board decide, as a school board?
I don't think we really
Nothing.
get much.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just want to be clear on that.
We do get a decision, like, we get to decide if we want to pursue 11 or if we want to stay at 9.
That's true.
I don't believe we
don't
do.
get-
No.
We don't get any.
So we have to mirror them if they go to 11?
No. It's,
It's more confusing than.
They're taking our input.
just asking our
They're
opinion.
asking our opinion. We're giving.
So it's kind of like
We're-
your mama asking you what you want to do and still keeping you on punishment?
I mean, our facilities.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to-
Wrong, the county commission does have that ability.
Yes. But the county commission respects the school board, and for that reason, we're reaching out to you and wanted your opinion, because we respect your opinion.
The county commission does have the ability to fix our district. So they wanted our, like Steve just said, when our input is out, we feel.
So make sure you look at me as a colleague and not a school board daddy, okay?
Yes. I look at you as a colleague and a friend. Anything else before we close? Yes, sir, Mr. Sharp.
Thank you. So Tucker mentioned something a second ago that kind of rang true to me about the district that he lives in. It's kind of stretched out and thin and whatnot. You know, it's interesting. We've seen multiple configurations of different size maps, but one thing that we have not seen is any map drawn irrespective to where the current sitting elected official lives. The fact that these maps have been drawn around where 18 people live to affect, you know, the 365,000 people in our county, it's really kind of unfair, frankly.
It's a matter of opinion. I mean, I think.
I'm not finished
I
just
did
yet.
not.
I'm not finished just yet, if you don't mind.
Well, really, our time's up, but I'll let you go ahead if you kind of make it brief. Our time's up, but go ahead.
So what I was going to get at is that, you know, it was brought up a couple of times by several different people, a couple of times publicly, that, you know, maybe the number should be 18 for county commission districts. One thing that I requested last week was to see maps of, you know, 13, 15, 18 drawn irrespective to where current elected officials live, just so we know what it could look like, keeping in consideration all the comptroller's guidelines for maps, keeping them compact and contiguous, all those different factors that are involved. And if we could accomplish something like that, let's just say 18, you could stay with 9 school board members, 18 commissioners, and it's really only adding 5 more spots than it would if we went to 11 on both. So just a different point of view. I think it would be interesting not only to see how it worked out, but, you know, if nothing else, for our posterity in the future commissions that will be performing the same exercise as a roadmap as to what better representation could look like if it weren't for those already sitting in seats drawing districts that could better favor themselves personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies, okay, last statement. Ms. Robinson, last statement.
Yeah, I just wanted to simply say that, you know, we don't get an opinion, we don't get a vote. To Commissioner Jeter's point, like, representation is really important. I don't know the answer for how you guys do this differently, but your point is incredibly well taken. And from the beginning of this process, that's where I've been. That's why I make the point as a board member, like, I've got 7,000 students. Like, the representation in that regard is not really what it should be. So I just wanted to say that as the commission, I hope that you guys will work toward solving that problem, because I hate for y'all to move forward in this process but still have that lingering out there. So appreciate you bringing that up. So I just wish I knew what the
Thank you
solution
all
was.
very much. And I'll say, for one, I want to be fair. And thank you. Thank you all very much. Hamilton County Department of Education, thank you for your time and setting up for us, and gentlemen, for putting it all up.
Thanks for coming to our home.